right, so we're back. So let's talk about Desperate Housewives. How did you get the role of Lynette Scavo?
Well, again, like sports night, again, the drum beats kind of go out into the zeitgeist about the great scripts, or at least the scripts that one is right for. And I heard from my friend Jennifer Gray, who came over. We had kids who were little. My kids were now 2 and 3 at the time, or yeah, around there. And she brought her daughter Stella over and said, "There's this script called Desperate Housewives. You should really audition for it." And I was kind of like, nah, nah, trying to deal with motherhood. Um, and I read it and I loved it. I thought it was really funny. And I went, it was a day when it was raining. That's how little it happens in LA. I was like, it's raining. And my audition was at 5 o'clock. I had both kids sort of in the bathtub. I have to pull myself together. The kids are crying because I'm leaving. My babysitter's there. I go in and I pull myself together and I put on really nice clothes and I do my hair because I'm thinking like I could be Lynette, but I could also be Bree and maybe I could be, Susan Mayer. And I thought maybe I could be the Hispanic supermodel, but that would be a reach. Um, and I went in and auditioned, and Mark was there, and the director, Charles, was there. And they gave me a few adjustments, and I walked out. And as it happens in a lot of auditions, I find that if you hear quickly, you're in the running. And if a day or two goes by, forget it. And it's usually as you're driving out of the lot. And I drove out a lot, and my agent called and said, "They want you, and you got the role." And I went, "Great." But I'd done enough pilots at that point. I was thrilled to get it, but I'd done enough pilots at that point that I thought, well, it's another pilot that I'll be doing that won't be picked up. I felt like I was the curse of the pilots. Um, I later found out from Mark Cherry, who's become a good friend of mine. He was like, "What was great about your audition?" And I was thinking, because I was so funny or because I was so talented. And he went, "Because you're such a mess, just like Lynette." I went, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Your clothes were stained, your hair wasn't done, you were a total mess." After I pulled myself together, I made a conscious effort. Um, so I think I fit the role at the time. I was a harried mother. And thank you to my children. As they say, every baby brings a basket. And so my kids brought Desperate Housewives. And, God, that's going to be on my tombstone, Desperate Housewives. I couldn't be more grateful for it. So, anyway, I got the role. We shot the pilot. Um, Again, I didn't think it was going anywhere. While we were shooting the pilot, I got Transamerica. So while we were shooting the pilot, I was starting to do research. We finished the pilot. I went off and shot Transamerica, came back and started doing the first season of Desperate. And my voice had dropped about 3 octaves. And I remember the first episode. I think it was I can't remember who directed it, but they came up and went, "Are you sick?" And I said, "No, no, I feel great. Your voice, it's really low. What's going on?" I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." The other thing was in Transamerica, the character's name was Bree, so I was so used to being called Bree. So every time they called to Marcia or someone said Bree, I was kind of like, "Oh, that's me." Um, and we started, shooting that first season, and I love that there's a little golden sort of bubble that you're in when you're shooting a series. And of course, I have more experience with television, and it's before anyone's seen it. So you sort of have a carte blanche for however many episodes you have until the audience comes in and the ratings come in and the network comes in. And you just get to do what you want. And I always liken it to rehearsals in a play. I love to rehearse. Once it comes time to perform, I'm like, I don't want to perform it. I just like rehearsing it. You're kind of free and easy and you don't feel any pressure and you don't know if it's a piece of shit or it's really good, and you have a lot of freedom. So we have this lovely golden cradle, and ABC did a fabulous job of marketing it, and they shot us out of the cannon and we got the golden ring, and it was huge from the beginning. And I remember sort of, it didn't seem like overnight, but I remember kind of going, oh, and there was the billboard on Sunset, and there was other billboards, and there I was on buses going by. And it didn't happen to me, but overnight the rest of the women, they couldn't go out. People were following to their house. People were going through their garbage. I mean, it was instant success. For some reason, it didn't happen to me, which was great. And changed my life. Changed my life totally. I remember I'd been eyeing an outdoor patio table forever. And it was really expensive. It was like one of those teak ones that'll go out to 12 feet or scoot into 5. And I think it was like $3,000, $4,000. And once the pilot went and it was a hit, I went and bought that table. And that was my big, like, I bought a table. But, also we were working so much that I remember sort of, I didn't quite get how big it was.
So what was the production schedule like for Desperate Housewives then?
I think we had 8 days to shoot it, and then they'd shoot in a ninth. They'd sneak in sort of a ninth day, but it would overlap. So you'd shoot. Some crew would be shooting the last episode, and some crew would be shooting the next episode. It's an ensemble. There were 5 of us really, so we didn't work that much. You'd have 30, 40-hour weeks, which is great. And I mainly worked with the wonderful Doug Savant, whom I adore and is such a great actor. Those first couple years, the ladies were a lot together. That's one of the things the network liked, is when all the ladies got together. And it was something else. I mean, it was a phenomenon. And I think hindsight, I realized what a phenomenon was more than while it was going on.
Mm-hmm. Did you not get recognized as much as the others, you said, but did you start to get recognized more than you had been before that?
Yes, definitely. Nothing huge. I remember going into a store, and I think this is like the second year, and I was looking at shirts, and I pulled out a tank, and I went, this is cute. And I looked at the front, and it said, I'm a Lynette. And I went, oh my God, it's bizarre. Yes, I did get recognized more, but I didn't have that weird thing of, people were following Marsha, people were certainly following Eva, so I didn't have that, which is great.
So how was the show originally described to you? What was kind of the premise setup that you were given?
It wasn't. It's not like someone came and said, will you do this show? I read the script, and what it is I think you can tell what the show is from the name, Desperate Housewives. I don't think anyone before had sort of put those two and things together. It's like they don't go together. You think it's going to be, desperate burglars and boring housewives, but the fact that Mark married those two things is indicative of what he did. And it was the voice that was particular in Desperate Housewives. It was Mark's voice. And he has an ability to create and hold up the icon of the quintessential, the almost character-like American suburban life, hold it up, make fun of it, and yet doing it in a loving way that doesn't tear it apart. It was certainly a soap opera. It was certainly a little bit of a cartoon, but it was also kind of wonderful and heartfelt. And he did a great thing of, I think, all the female characters, the leads. First of all, he put women in their 40s, except for Eva Longoria, who was like 15. He put women in their 40s as leads. And you go, oh my God, women in their 40s, they're viable, they're sexy, they're interesting, people love them. And he made it funny, and he made it heartfelt, and also they were sort of iconic, almost mythical parts of the female psyche. There's Hestia, of the hearth. There's the mother figure, there's the huntress, and they kind of go into our psyche as those archetypal female roles. And I just thought it was brilliant of him.
What was,
And God, he worked hard.
was
No
it-
one worked harder. Yeah.
Yeah, talk a little bit about working with him as an individual. Like, if you had input on your character, could you go to him and say, I don't agree with this, or I love this, or...
I think you can. I mean, in the pilot, Mark, because he was never run a show before. Mark was retiring, and he gave it off to a producer named Michael Edelstein and the director Charles. And then as it got going, and I think Mark realized, wait, this is my voice that makes this work. This is what's funny about me. This is my point of view. I mean, he tells the story about, his mother gave him the idea for Desperate Housewives. So I think he became more in charge until by the end it was all Mark. And yeah, he is collaborative. He has a very strong view of what he likes. He knows exactly the rhythm of the kind of jokes he wants to take. I rarely go and talk to the writers. I don't think it's my job. And also I'm not an idea person. I don't come up with a lot of ideas. But like, I know Terry went to talk to them quite a bit. And so he would. There was something, I think, in the first season or the second season where my character's on a soccer field, and it's after the character's been taking Ritalin to try and sort of keep up with being a mother and try and keep up with her kids. And she has a breakdown, and she's surrounded by her friends. And she talks about, I feel like a bad mother, and I feel like my kids would be better off without me. And that all came from me. I was like, this is what it feels like for me to be a mom. I feel sorry for my kids to have me as a mother. So he certainly took that. I certainly didn't give him any comedy ideas. Mark's the funniest.
So you mentioned you and the other housewives were together a lot those first seasons.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about working with them as an ensemble.
Well, everyone was a seasoned professional. Even Eva Longoria was young, but boy, nobody works harder than Eva. I'm sure, as you've found out. So I think everyone was a seasoned professional. I think everyone was really grateful for the job. I think everyone's very different. It wasn't like they were casting a family where you kind of go, oh, they want the same sensibility. We want the same feeling from each person. They were casting very, no pun intended, very disparate characters for these desperate housewives. So I think you had 4 very different women, and 5, really, Nicolette Sheridan. So I think everyone was very different, and there was a lot of pressure on the show. I mean, our second job was really the publicity. We never had a weekend off. We'd shoot pretty long hours, particularly those first couple of years, much more than 30 or 40 hours, and then you'd have publicity on the weekends and afterwards and stuff like that. So there was a lot of pressure on it. So there were some very tense times, and there were some real fun times.
So let's talk a little bit about Lynette. How
Okay.
would you describe her?
Isn't it funny? I never liked her name. I
Really?
don't. I hope that's not terribly disappointing, but Lynette Scavo. Scavo always sounds like a skin disease. Oh, you got a Scavo when I see it. I told that to Doug, and he was like, "You're crazy. That's a great name. I love our names." Lynette is a harried mother. I don't know if that's a tautology. Maybe every mother is harried. She's feels like she's drowning in motherhood, which I've often felt like. Except she has many more good reasons to be drowning in motherhood than I do. She's ambitious. She acts before she thinks. She can be intensely loyal and loving, and she can also be very harsh and abrupt. Eva actually turned to me and she went, "You know how you're like your character?" And I said, "No, how?" I said, "I'm tired and wearing bad clothes." She said, "No, that you bite before you bark." I go, "I do?" And she goes, "Yeah." So maybe Lynette had a little of that. She certainly had, I always wanted her to be gentler with her husband. It always upset me that they would sort of, bring out, maybe because it was dramatic and funny, but they'd sort of bring out her bitchy side, and that always bothered me. But maybe that's what they needed to do. Um, and I think she always means well. She's trying to fix things. It just goes awry.
You mentioned her clothing. How important were her wardrobe and her styling, like to her character?
For me, it was very important because I was coming in with two young kids, and as I told you before, I was a rundown, tired mom. And it was TV, and it was ABC, it's network. And the last thing they want you to do is look ugly or disheveled. I mean, nowadays you totally can. I mean, I didn't wear any makeup for the first season of American Crime. But I was very clear about, look, this is how you dress if you're a tired mom. I need button-ups if I'm nursing. She's always going to have food on her clothes. She doesn't have time for fancy shoes. She doesn't have time to shop. Sometimes when your kids are little, the only way you know day from night is because you go, oh, it's daytime, I'm in clothes, or oh, it's nighttime, I'm in pajamas, but not because you're aware of what's going on in the outside world. So I remember talking to the wonderful costumer Kate Adair, and we'd go shopping, and I'd go, no, she wouldn't have money for that. And Kate really got behind it and said, oh, okay, good, okay, good. I have to say, my mother came to me and went, can't you ever wear nice clothes? Does she have to look like that? But I think that was important because, that said, I had my hair done every day, I had makeup on every day, but I was hoping to not give this unrealistic version of motherhood. I'm sure some mothers go through that, go through motherhood with great aplomb and always look fantastic, but boy, I sure didn't.
Talk a little bit about how Lynette goes back and forth between kind of being in the working world and also a stay-at-home mom, because that kind of continues throughout the whole series.
It does. And I think for that it was really accurate. I remember talking to Sabrina Wind, who came on as a producer of Desperate Housewives and kind of Mark's right-hand woman. And I was dealing with two small kids and going to work and feeling incredibly guilty, crushing guilt. And I was talking to Sabrina about it, and this goes back to Lynette, and she said, you know what? They did a study, and they asked a gazillion women who work outside the home or work part-time out of the home, what percentage of your life do you feel guilty about being a mother away from the home? And it came up with something like 89%. And Sabrina looked at that and said, yeah, I'm one of those. And she said, and then they asked the same amount of men the same question, men who work outside of the home or partly outside of the home. And she said, guess the percentage of men. And I said, 40, no, 50, no, 30. Goose egg, 0. And Sabrina said, ever since then, I'm not guilty about coming to work. Now, I love that as a North Star. I could never get there. And so I think as I was I'm sure the writers came up with this, and I'm sure I talked about it a lot, but the guilt of staying home and working. And I'm glad that they portrayed that on the show because it's a real thing. And, when you have kids, at least my experience was when you have kids, and I think that was Lynette's experience, you kind of go, I'm a mother. Your old identity ceases to exist. You go, I used to be a mover and a shaker in the corporate world. I now I'm worried about macaroni and cheese all day. I used to, and it seems bifurcated completely. It was like a guillotine comes down. And that being a mother is probably the most important job you'll have your entire life. And yet, it can't be your whole, maybe it can, but for a lot of women, you go, this cannot be my whole entire job. It just can't be. I have to have a world outside. And so I think that was those storylines of Lynette going back to work and loving being back at work, but then trying to juggle the family and trying to nurse while she was working, and her husband stepping in and being the stay-at-home dad, and how that affected their relationship. I think those are all things that are reflected in society and certainly happen. And I remember after the show was done, I started this website called What the Flicka, and it was basically because of my my experience with motherhood that I didn't find a whole lot of agreement or companionship out there for. And also because after Desperate, I was, luckily enough, I was part of the mom group. You know, everybody had their own favorite housewives, and the moms seemed to like me. And I didn't want to let that group go. And I wanted to create a safe space for many different experiences in parenting, not just like, isn't it the best thing you've ever done in your life? And one of the first blogs I wrote was about that I'm drowning. I'm drowning in the guilt of motherhood. And I certainly think that's a reflection. The show is, you know, representing America and possibly the guilt that mothers feel. But I got letters from Paris and England and Turkey and Italy and many, many, Denmark, of mothers going, I feel the exact same way. I feel guilty all the time. I feel guilty when I go to work. Then I'm home and I feel like I'm drowning. And so I think Mark caught on to something that I think is pretty universal.
So Lynette gets diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma at the end of season 3. What did you do to kind of prepare for that storyline, and how did you feel about how it played out?
It's funny how I don't know if it's funny. It's interesting. So many people have come up to me and said, I was going through cancer while Lynette was going through cancer, and I made sure I watched every week because it really helped me get through it. Mark came to me at the end of season 2 and said, I want you to shave your head. Are you into that? And I went, yeah, totally into it. And Nicolette Sheridan took me aside and went, don't shave your head. And I went, why? And she goes, because it's TV. You're going to have your head shaved. And then, I don't know, in 8 weeks they'll be like, oh, and then we're skipping ahead 2 years and you're going to be stuck with a shaved head. Don't shave your head. And I went, oh, thanks. So I had to go back to Mark guiltily and say, I'm not really that kind of actor, I guess. I don't want to shave my head. But the research I did was, it's always the same stuff. I read a lot of books, people who had gone through their journeys with cancer, people who talked about cancer as a gift, the different stages, not of cancer, but of dealing with it, you know, of denial and anger and why me. I read online about what it looks like, how it manifests, what you want to do, and mainly a lot about what you're dealing with internally, what it feels like, what your family's scared of, what your spouse is scared of. And that's how I dealt with it.
Then there was a 5-year time jump between seasons 4 and 5.
Wasn't that crazy?
That was crazy. What was your impression when you saw that in the script?
I thought it was genius. I thought it was crazy, but it was genius because you have this 5-year pool with which the writers can make up anything. There can be anything in this pool. Oh, 2 years ago this happened. Oh, 4 years ago that happened. Oh, someone moved in this. I mean, it's just this fathomless well of possibilities. I was really sad to see the twins go, and I was really sad to see the boys, all 3 of them, go. That just kind of broke my heart. I love them, but I know they were off to do different things, and gosh, they're grown up now. I like the possibility of it, and then we got these wonderful new actors. You know, we got Max and Charlie Carver, who are great, and wonderful new actors played my kids, and it was rejuvenating. I thought it was really clever.
So tell us a little bit about the relationship between Tom and Lynette. They have their fair share of ups and downs throughout the series.
I know. I love Doug Savant so much. Well, I know it wasn't my choice, but I still feel guilty about how Lynette treated Tom. I wish she treated him better. I would never treat my husband that way. The terms of the deception and several times she totally torpedoed his chances, and I certainly understand that it's great fodder for drama and comedy, but still I sort of go, oh God, that was harsh. So thank you for staying with her, Tom. They have ups and downs, and I think they're, one of my sisters described this to me. She said, in a marriage, and it's difficult being married, She said, in a marriage, people go, well, we had a baby to save our marriage. And my sister always went, you had a baby to save your marriage? Why don't you have an affair to save your marriage? That would save your marriage a lot easier than a baby. She said it's kind of like a marriage is like a piece of paper folded in and on itself 3 times. And it's folded a bunch. And so you have certain fault lines in it. And a kid comes and goes on the piece of paper and it cracks. So, you know, Tom and Lynette, with all these children, have a lot of difficulties in their marriage and a lot of difficulties in that, you know, Tom has married a competitive, very competent, intelligent woman who, as Mark many times said, you know, she's better in the corporate world than he is. And he loved that about her. And then you marry someone like that and somehow it becomes a liability. And she married someone who's incredibly steady and loyal and wonderful. And suddenly you sort of go, why are you so steady? Why can't you be more sparky? So I think it was true. And I think the American public, and certainly me, and actually my husband, were really attached to Tom and Lynette when they were going through their marital difficulties. And Lynette almost had an affair. You know, even Bill, well, first I would get on airplanes. Many times I was flying back and forth to do press. People would be like, what are you doing? I am worried about Tom and Lynette. Why aren't you, et cetera, et cetera. And even my husband went, what's going on? I don't want them to break up. I mean, he was really upset. So, you know, people want their marriages to work and people want their TV marriages to work. And I think what was so great about Tom and Lynette is certainly by the end, by year 7 or 8, you really had the feeling they're totally going to make it. If they've made it through all this stuff, they're going to make it. And there's a deep love. And that wonderful scene, I think it was season 8, when they walk down Wisteria Lane towards each other. I remember shooting that with Doug. And it was so meaningful because it was the beginning of Tom and Lynette being okay. And it was the end of the series. And I turned to Doug and I went, we're never going to shoot this is our last big scene together. And it was so lovely and bittersweet. I don't remember if it came out well, but I remember I loved shooting it.
It was a great scene.
It was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it lasted for 8 seasons. Why do you think the show resonated so much with people?
I think several reasons. One, Mark's voice that he created in the show, Mark's voice is delicious. It's like chocolate. You kind of keep wanting more. And you're not concerned with if it's nutritious or not. You're just like, oh, this is great. I want more. And it was pleasurable to watch, and it was fun, and it pulled at your heartstrings. And it wasn't exactly dark. It was a wonderful journey to be on, and that's because of Mark's voice and Mark's talent. And then I think because of what it did, I think America, I don't know why it worked in Europe. I have no idea. I'm a total rock star in France. I'm like Madonna in France. It's so weird. But I think in America, we appreciate someone who makes fun of us. I think we can make fun of ourselves, but who also loves us and cherishes the American way of life and American nostalgia and the unit of the family unit and that kind of iconic Wisteria Lane apple pie. We love it, and yet we know it's silly and we can poke fun of it and we can see that it's also shallow, but there's also a deep part. So I think it spoke to us on that level, and I think it made people feel safe.
Are there any favorite storylines or episodes that you have from the series?
I loved the scene out on the soccer field. I loved the scene dancing on the bar. That was really fun. I loved, there was a scene between Doug and I when we're in the hospital. We're in a hospital waiting room. And it's that weird moment where people go, that moment? But you know, actors, you go, what's your favorite moment? And they tell you and you go, that? But there's a moment where he asks me, did you have an affair? And I look out this way. Lynette looks out that way. and you can just see it kind of hitting her, the depths of the damage she possibly almost did. It was an affaire de coeur, as they say, an affair of the heart. But and I just remember going, I love that moment. I think that's it. Pretty much anything. It was really fun shooting with Eva. She just made anything fun.
Mm-hmm. A couple really memorable episodes for Lynette. One was Bang, the hostage situation in the supermarket.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
What do you recall about filming that scene? Or that whole episode, I guess, pretty much takes place in there.
I remember Larry, who's a wonderful director, executive producer. Larry directed that. They gave all the really tough ones to him, and rightly so. And we were shooting that forever, you know, where we're huddled in there. And the great Laurie Metcalf is in that, and genius, eating the cookies with the gun. And so I remember watching Laurie, and she was so good and so delightful to watch. And then they shot us and shot us and shot us. And it was like, I don't know, hour 10 or 11, where Larry turned to me and went, "It's going to be on you now." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "You got to bring it this time, not like all those other times." And I went, "Oh yeah, I know, it's on me now." And we shot it where she's going to shoot me, and she ends up shooting Tom's old girlfriend. And I remember, for some reason, you know, sometimes in the theater you sort of pray for the muse to descend. You sort of go, well, Sarah Paulson taught me this little prayer when you're backstage, which I use on his play, and I go, I just open myself up. I hope the muse descends. I'm opening myself up, which also means the chaos of the muse descends. I mean, you can't control it. I don't mean it takes over you. I mean, it's improvisatory. Athletes do it too. And somehow the muse descended, and the scene really worked. And I remember Larry turned to me at the end and he went, "Okay, you brought it." And I was like, whoa. That's what I remember. I was proud of that episode.
Mm-hmm. Another great one was when the tornado hit, Something's Coming. And we're not sure what happens to Lynette's family at the end of that one.
Could you believe the set design of that? I mean, we left one night, came back another afternoon. They'd had 12 hours maybe, and the set department had just created that set. I mean, it was so intricate and brilliant. You had to have these small, narrow pathways that you could get through all the debris. I mean, they just worked their tails off, and it looked fantastic. Here's what I remember about that episode. We had to act, I feel like we were outside. It was me and Kevin Rahm, I think. We were outside my house, Lynette's house, and we had to do one of those, we're talking, and here comes the tornado. And we were just making it up. I've never seen a tornado, so I kind of went, "Here comes the tornado." What's a tornado? How am I looking? What am I supposed to do? And it felt like, you know, Jurassic Park, where they have to go "Wah!" to the green tennis ball. So I remember feeling like an asshole with that scene. So I'm going, making faces at the sky. And then I remember that scene where she comes out of her house and her kids are missing. And that incredible feeling of relief when they sort of come out of the hole. And the kids were sequestered in this they built a little cave for them, and they were little. And they came stumbling out. Of course, they thought it was totally cool. They get to hide in the cave with all the debris and then move the board across and get them. But yeah, I remember that. I screamed myself hoarse that day. That's what I remember. And I was bald. I remember that too.
And then
You don't want to live on Wisteria Lane at all. What was it, 89 people were murdered?
something high like
It's
that.
really high.
In 2005, you won the Primetime Emmy for lead actress for Desperate Housewives.
Uh-huh.
What did that honor mean to you? You were actually up against a couple of your co-stars in that category.
Yes, I was. I almost didn't go because I was like, my kids were little. It meant you had to take a shower and pull yourself together. And there was no way I was going to win. No way I was going to win. I couldn't get a dress. No one would give me a dress. Finally, Kate Adair called her friend Kevin Hall, the wonderful designer Kevin Hall. She was like, "Could you please dress Felicity?" And he was very kind and said, "Sure." So we went over and I put on a dress. It was like, "Fine, that's great." It's a lovely pink dress. And I remember getting my hair and makeup done, and Bill came in and he said, "Well, do you have something to say?" And I went, "Oh my God, honey, I'm not going to win." And he said, "You have a 1 in 5 chance of winning. Just figure out something to say." So I sort of scratched down a few ideas. And as they were announcing the category, I took Bill's hand and I sat back, ready to, like, applaud Marcia or someone else. And they said my name, and you could have blown me over with a feather. And I sort of got, and I don't know, I'm embarrassed that I got teared up, but I was so sort of shocked by it. And it meant a lot, particularly in a comedy category, because I'm not that funny. And just for the show to be recognized, and for that character, I mean, I know it was me, but it was that character being recognized. She wasn't really one of the flashy ones, and I thought that was pretty cool. I felt like it was a real win for the whole show.
And so the show did last for 8 seasons, went off the air in 2012. What do you think is the legacy of Desperate Housewives?
I think there are quite a few legacies of Desperate Housewives. Of course, we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Desperate Housewives didn't invent, women as leads on television. You go back to Lucille Ball and even before that. I think there's several. One, that women in their 40s are viable. I think there was a whole onslaught after Desperate Housewives of female-driven shows that to this day are still there. It might be waning now. I think the legacy of, which again started probably with Sex and the City, but of gay men celebrating women. There's Mark celebrating women and making them the leads. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that sort of hybrid of soap opera, drama, that kind of voice, which is really, it's a thin membrane. You have to really find it. I think that's a legacy, and people are chasing that. And sometimes, people are creating shows to chase that, just like they chased Cheers or whatever, or Friends. I think that's part of its legacy. What else do I think it's its legacy? Well, it's certainly given me a boost. I mean, the reason I have a career in television is a lot because people go, "Oh, she was in Desperate Housewives and that show did well." So it certainly changed my career for real.
So let's talk about the show you're on now, American Crime.
Okay.
How did you get involved with the project?
Atlantic Theater Company, here we go again. It's all who you know. Tommy Donaghy, who's an Atlantic Theater Company member, wrote me and said, "My friend Michael McDonald's trying to get you a script. Can I slip it to you?" Which, by the way, agents hate. But because it's Tommy, I was like, "Sure, send me the script." So I read the script and I loved the script. At which point I called my agent going, "Someone slipped me the script." And she went, "Well, it's out to Helen Hunt, so there's no point in you reading it." And I kind of went, "Why do they want me to read it if it's out for Helen Hunt?" So it was this sort of convoluted thing where I was hearing one thing from the show and another thing from the business going, it's not open for you. But anyway, finally that somewhat got sorted out. And I loved the script. I was concerned about the part of Barb because I was concerned that she would just come off as a bitter, angry woman, who you kind of go, "Oh, well, you write her off because she's so angry and bitter and bigoted." And they said, "Well, why don't you meet with John Ridley?" And I said, "Great." So I'm watching the Academy Awards, and they announced 12 Years a Slave and that John Ridley won. And I went, "John Ridley? John Ridley, that's the guy I'm meeting tomorrow at 11 o'clock. He just won the Academy Award, and his speech was so elegant. And so I felt so terrible for this guy that at 11 o'clock in the morning after he wins the Oscar, he has to meet with this thin-lipped older woman in a coffee shop. I'm like, sorry, you should be in bed with your wife. You should be hungover and just stay in bed the whole day. So I went in to meet with him and talk about the script. And he said this later. I didn't realize it, but I kind of came in thinking, I'm sure you want to get out of here as soon as you can. So, hi, love the script. Okay, here are my issues. Here's my problem. And John went, whoa, whoa, boy, I guess my fame lasted about 10 seconds. Here I am getting drilled by someone who is talking to me about what their concerns are with my script. He thought it was so abrupt and so rude, which I didn't mean at all. I was just trying to get him out of there and he didn't want to talk to me. So I loved meeting with him. He's really smart. I mean, he's so eloquent. It's kind of, you ask him any kind of question, and it's as if you asked him 6 months ago. He's written a treatise on it, and then he comes and sort of gives it to you extemporaneously. He talks like that. So then I went home and I talked. I said yes, I'd love to be a part of it. I talked to Bill about the part, and he really solved it for me. He said, "Look, this woman isn't being bitchy. This woman isn't being hard-hearted. What she's doing is she's doing one thing. She's getting justice for her son, which is what one does when one is a good mother. She thinks she's being a good mother. So it's not that in the middle of this heartbreak, when she's doing a job, she has the time and the energy to turn around and excoriate her ex-husband. It's that she's going, don't get in my way, don't get in my way. Enough, enough. I'm just trying to do this one thing." And that really helped point my, set my compass, as it were. And I even remember in the pilot when Tim Hutton and I, the wonderful Tim Hutton and I, shot this scene from the car into the side of the road. It's a big fight. And she does go after him about their past. And it was so difficult to go after him about their past just based on not, this has been burning in me for 25 years and I just want to like land on you and knock the stuffing out of you, but just get out of my way. I'm just telling you this to get out of the way. And I even ad-libbed, at the end as I'm walking away, I ad-libbed, just stay out of my way. So it was that wonderful thing of, I tried to act the intention and not the words, which made a big difference in my acting. And it was the most amazing. We had a wonderful DP, Ramsey Nichol, who was there for the whole first season. I mean, they worked 80-hour weeks. I mean, it was unbelievable. He's there for everything. He shot it. He cared. He was so great. John was there for the whole thing. And everything had this feeling of like, I don't know what we're doing. I mean, for the pilot, we were going, well, this will never get picked up again. We can do whatever we want. This will never get picked up again. And ABC, God bless them, they just went, go, do whatever you want to do, which is so different than most network TV. Usually they're like, does she have to have that color pen? Does she have to be in the black, cardigan? Does her hair have to be back? They were just like, whatever you want. And, I put in my dark contacts, I wore glasses, I didn't hide my gray, and I kept waiting for the network to show up to be like, this is network, can't you look a little good? No, wasn't a problem. So kudos to ABC. I mean, they're changing the face of network TV, which is amazing. And John Ridley is, again, a wonderful, wonderful leader. I remember I had such a lesson from him. Tim came to the production. I was already there rehearsing or something, and we really went, we found a kindred spirit. We had the best time. And as you walked into the production office in Austin, there's everybody's headshots on the wall as you walked in, sort of saying, this is our cast. And as an actor, it's embarrassing. I found it embarrassing, and so did Tim. You're kind of like, oh, there's my stupid headshot from, mine was, I think, from like 12 years ago. And so it's cringeworthy. And so as we were hanging production office and rehearsing as the weeks went by. We went, oh, I have an idea. And there was a whole list of people that were supposed to get our parts, you know, like Helen Hunt, and then it went to someone else and someone else and someone else, and then it came to me. And Tim's was, I don't know, Daniel Day-Lewis and someone else and someone else and someone else, and then it came to Tim. And we remembered these names. So first, we printed up all the headshots of all the actors that were in first position, and we put them under us. You know, first came this, then came this, then came that, and Helen Hunt, and then Felicity got it, and Tim did the same thing. We were like, that's hilarious, it's so funny. We put it up. The next day we came into production, and it's gone. We went, someone did that. So we printed them again, because we were like, we're just Shecky. We're Shecky Green. We're so funny. Did it again. That's so funny. The next day, gone. We went, okay, well, someone doesn't like that joke. Someone with their, you know, stick up their butt. And then, so we went, oh, I know, let's deface our headshots, because again, cringeworthy. So we went and did like goatees and missing teeth and funny hats on our headshots. Same thing happened. New ones up the next day. Did it again, same thing happened. New ones up the next day. And I was talking to John about a scene, and I went, I know, God, there's no joking in this production office. We did this to the headshots, and then we did that to the headshots. And he went, oh yeah, I know. I said, why? He said, I took them down. I had him take them down each time. And I went, why? It's so funny. Who cares? And he said, no, we're a team. We're a team. It's a respectful team. I want people to come into this building and go, those are our players in front of the camera. There are players behind the camera. People don't make jokes. This is serious. And I went, oh, okay. But that's what I meant. I mean, he is in 1,000%. And he's willing to sort of throw himself off what is known and proven. And he likes the feeling like it's up in the air. We don't know what we're doing, but it's improvisatory. Let's go. Let's push the envelope. And I have to say, American Crime, over those 2 seasons, hired more minorities, women, gay, straight, black, brown, yellow, writers, producers, directors, DPs, focus pullers, across the board. And because of that, and I think because of the content and because of the courage of ABC, I can't help but think that hopefully American Crime is a, you know, the acknowledgement that it's received is a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm. It has an anthology format, so the storyline is contained to just that one season. Is that appealing as an actor, kind of knowing that the end is in sight there?
Yeah, totally. One, because during the 10 or 11 episodes, anything can happen. They actually can kill you off, or you actually can fall off a cliff or lose a leg, or I don't know. And the other thing is, it's rep. It's like you're doing theater. You know, one day you're doing Neil Simon, the next you're doing Eugene O'Neill. You get to totally recreate yourself and the character, and come back and work with people who you know are excellent, that raise the level of your game. So it's amazing. It's a paradise.
So you told us a little bit about Barb from season 1. Tell us a little bit about Leslie from season 2.
Leslie Graham is the headmaster of a tawny private school in Indiana. She was brought in about 6 years ago by the school board. She was brought in more as a fundraiser and secondarily as an educator. They needed to have a huge push. They're trying to raise $50 million for a new complex to, raise the level of the school. I think she's an A-type personality. She'd excel no matter where she is. She's brilliant. She's a brilliant chess player. I'd say she's 20 steps ahead of anyone else that's going on, just in terms of she's thinking of the next, what's going to happen, what's the repercussions. I think she'd succeed whether she was at a public school or a private school or a Fortune 500 company or a public service job or anything that she had. She cares about doing a great job and doing it 110%. And she is a politician. And I mean that in the best sense of the word. Every time I see politician, and I just saw you do it, everyone goes, like that. It's like a little bit like, oh, that's not good. But when I say politician, I mean, if you think about a politician's job, it's taking these very different points of view and objectives and needs and wants from a huge group of people, bringing them together and finally trying to find a common good decision that works a little bit for everyone, or at least for the majority. It's an impossible job. And it takes a specific kind of person that indeed is a politician that can talk to you and find out what you need, and talk to you and find out what you need, and sound like they're listening and yet not be dictated by what you do. And I know we slam people now for being politicians, but you wouldn't turn to a doctor and go, ugh, I hate that guy. He's such a doctor, or a lawyer. He's so lawyerly. You'd go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And that's what she is. And her concern is, Leslie Graham's concern is the whole school. She is responsible for the body of the school and how that school affects the community, because they have an enormous amount of scholarships and aid and all that sort of stuff that does lift the entire community up.
So you're actually live tweeting this season as the show airs. What are you seeing in the online discussion? Because I mean, this season is about following accusations of rape, which is not exactly a light subject. What are people saying online?
Mainly what I'm getting is people. Let me back up a step. I think this season is easier to watch in a way because last season it was an intellectual jump, hopefully, that audiences had to make. In other words, it was about, murder. It was about drug addiction. It was about illegal drugs. It was about dark, dark subjects that on the whole, most people hear about through the news or those kinds of things. So it was an intellectual thing. This season, it's about community and family and education and sexual orientation and sexual assault. These are things that are much closer to home that most of us can go, oh, if I haven't experienced that, I know of a friend, or yes, my kids are at school, or whatever it is. So that's easier to follow. So getting back to the tweets, in terms of the sexual assault, a lot of what I hear is, I'm so glad people are talking about male rape. And I'm so glad that this is being put to the forefront. And I know someone that happened to, or yes, that happened to me. And so I think it's a relief and a happiness for that. And I think it's also, in a tangential way, people are responding to, what do you fight for? And what's your identity? And that you have a very affluent African American family who you see a very powerful woman, played by the wonderful Regina King, who is looking out for her own. And is she right to do that, to look after her own? Does that say something about race or color, or does it just say something about motherhood? And then you have a white woman, me, looking after her school and only looking after her school. Does that say, is she right? Is she wrong? So I think it brings up questions, as they all are, which are interdigitating of race, of allegiance, of what's right. And those are all conversations that I see on the Twitter sphere, whatever it is. And also just how great the young actors are in it. I mean, wouldn't you say they talk a lot about how great the actors are? I mean, Connor Jessup and Joey Polari and Angelica Rivera and all that sort of.
Are there pros and cons, do you think, to the live tweeting? Do you like that immediacy of hearing from fans or critiques what people are saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean. You have to get used to it. I try and just tweet during the commercial breaks. So people aren't kind of going, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, there are pros and cons. You kind of have to get ready for the criticisms, and people are allowed to criticize and say what they like and what they don't like. So I just kind of have to brace myself for that. But I think people want to have a conversation while it's going on, particularly since it's so inciting. And I think that's really cool to get, and I think it also instigates conversation of ways that people wouldn't think too. They're just watching the story, and it's not until someone reads a tweet or writes a tweet and goes, yeah, is it right that Regina is advising her son not to help the other players? Is that correct, Act? What does that say about race? What does that say? Do you trust Leslie? Why do you not trust Leslie, but you do trust, let's say, Lily Taylor's character, the wonderful Lily Taylor? Is it because she's a victim? Do you, when the story got turned on its head, it says rape, and then it got turned on its head, and you go, oh, a boy got raped. There was a lot of thing of like, whoa, I didn't expect that to be coming, and what are your preconceived prejudices about that, If it's a girl, of course the guy is guilty. If it's a guy, of course the guy's not guilty. So the good thing about tweeting is it starts a conversation and it starts people thinking deeper about the story.
Mm-hmm. So we just have a few kind of summing up and craft questions now. What is it that you like about acting?
I love the community of acting. I love the tribe of actors. I love actors. I married one. I love storytelling. I love to be told stories. And I love the art of TV or film or theater because it can transport you and you can really connect to what is wonderful and magical or awful and moving about being human, the truth of the human soul. And it's a kind of magic. And I spent a long time wondering if it was worthy, but now I think it is.
What do you think is so worthy about it?
Because I think through storytelling, through telling our own stories or listening to someone else's story, someone's true story, is one of the only ways that we can have understanding and empathy for another human being, which I think is the only way you can break down the walls and have unity.
It's lovely. Have you had any mentors throughout your career?
Many. Those wonderful teachers that everyone goes, oh, those teachers. I can kind of count them off. I had a wonderful teacher in grade school called Rhett Harper. And of course, it all comes down to, who's still alive and my friend in Colorado. It all comes down to someone going, you're special. I believe in you. Who cares if they're right or wrong? They just go, you. It can also be a grandmother or a parent. So there was Rhett Harper in grade school. There was an acting teacher named Mel Mrochinsky at the Interlochen Arts Academy. And in college, there was a man named David Mamet who went, I'm going to give you a shot. And for some reason, believed in me. And to be honest, I don't know if this is wrong because I happen to be married to him, but Bill Macy. And then my mother.
She was a big supporter early on. Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about this with Desperate Housewives, but how do you think roles for women on television have changed since you first started in the industry?
I think they've changed 180 degrees. I mean, one is global for both sexes. That young people create their own work. When I was young, it was like you waited by the phone and you hope your agent called. Now they're writing and producing and directing. I think it's, the red camera, and I think it's how the industry has changed and that there are so many platforms upon which to show your work. It's glutted the market, but unlike independent film, where you go, there's 80 films opening this weekend and no one's going to any of them. With television, because you can watch them on your phone or on your computer or anything like that, people are watching content and they're drawn to what appeals to them and what's good. So that's changed for both sexes. And for girls, it started with, I guess it started with Lucille Ball, but it was slow, of women going, I want to be in charge of my own project. I want to write it. I want to produce it. I mean, all the young women I know, and not even so young are going, yeah, but I want to produce it. Yes, I'll do that, but I want to produce it. I mean, I remember the first time that Eva Longoria came to me and she said they want me to host the Latin American, what are they're like the
Alma Awards?
what?
The Alma
Alma,
Awards?
the Alma Awards. And I went, oh, that's cool. You're going to do it? And she goes, no, I said I'd only do it if I could produce it. And I went, what do you know about, how can you do that? And she goes, I don't know anything about it. I'm just going to learn. And that was such an eye-opener for me. And I think that opportunity is there for girls. It's still so much harder for girls than men. Were you touching her because we're out of time?
No, we're good.
Oh, why were you touching her? Because we're out of time?
It's just we're usually around an hour, but we're good to keep going.
Okay.
For
I saw that and I was like, I should shut up. I should shut up.
Not at all.
I have a friend who the opportunities are I would say probably triple for men what they are for women. And yet I think we're chipping away at it. I think the more women we get in positions of power, the more producers, the more directors, the more writers, and certainly American Crime has been in service of that.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement? Just a little light question.
You mean like award-wise?
Or just a work that you're proud of, either a role or a show that stands out for you, or
on television?
Probably, yeah.
Because this is that. Yeah. I would say first season of American Crime. I'm really proud of that. I did a small role in a movie called Rudderless, which was directed by William H. Macy. Again, the casting couch is alive and well. I had to sleep with him, but I enjoyed it. And I worked with Billy Crudup, the wonderful actor Billy Crudup. And I literally did the first scene and I went, oh, that's how it's done. Like it was an education in one scene. I think I got 3 scenes with him. And I left there determined to try and clean my work up the way his is so clean and so precise. And he never makes anything up. He never invents. Never. Doesn't help it at all. And by helping it, I mean, adding to it. Oh, it's a sad scene. See, I'm really sad. And that was my goal for American Crime. And I think because I never thought it would go anywhere, I was willing to, you kind of have to risk going, I'm just going to be bad. I'm just going to risk being bad because I'm going to do it in a different way. And I was really proud of that. I'm still really proud of it. I don't know if I did it in the second episode, but I think I did it in the first.
Do you have any career regrets?
Oh my God, so many. I've done so many things wrong. It took me so long to learn how to work hard. I didn't know what it was. I was certainly trained. I mean, I was trained up the wazoo, but then they go work on your part, and you're supposed to go off in your room and go, I'm going to practice saying my lines this way. I'm going to practice saying my lines this way. I mean, I didn't know what it meant to work hard, and I finally had to get fired a couple times before I went, well, I can't do the same thing, and I had to figure out what it meant for me to work hard, and that, I've got to make up hard work. Nothing replaces hard work. And now I work really hard.
What advice would you give to an aspiring actress?
I would say, you're hungry. To an aspiring actress, I would say, if you can get out, do. Because 5% of the union makes a living wage. That's 50 grand and below. I would say if you can't get out, diversify. Write, direct, produce. Be your own entity. That's what I would say. And I think finally I would say, if you can, I know this sounds so weird, but this is what came up for me. I would find some sort of spiritual practice to ground yourself, because it's so easy to just spin out and lose it.
What has that been for you?
Oh, it's too boring to talk about.
So our last question then is, how would you like to be remembered?
How would you like to die?
No.
How would I like to be remembered? Geez. don't know. How would I like to be remembered? I guess I'd like to be remembered as a deep, truthful actor who was a pleasure to work with. It's a very small boat, and you want to be with good people who make it easier.
That's great. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys. It is.